this episode of After Earnings, Duolingo, the language learning app famed for its nagging green owl mascot, has expanded into a broader gamified education platform with a $5 billion market cap. Well, 2026 is a big year for Duolingo, which announced last fall a new strategy of prioritizing free user growth over monetization. It's a big, bold move, one made possible for founder and CEO Luis von Ahn by having voting control of the company. But investors have increasingly focused on whether Duolingo can sustain its strong conversion of free users into paying subscribers over time under its freemium model. But to unpack it all, I'm joined by Gillian Munson, who after 6 years on Duolingo's board became the company's chief financial officer this February. We discussed the go big or go home strategy that she's now executing on, how the company is using math and music to unlock new growth vectors, and what the future holds for Duolingo's billion-dollar-plus hoard of cash. Let's get into it. We have Gillian Munson, Chief Financial Officer at Duolingo, about 7 weeks into the job as CFO, but as she just said before the camera started rolling, 6 years and 7 weeks into a partnership with Duolingo, given that Gillian was on the board beforehand. So, Gillian, you've just had your first Q1 earnings report. And the latest update on a strategy that was set in motion while you were on the board, which is to refocus Duolingo on growing the total user base to reach 100 million daily active users by 2028. More so as a near-term focus, even than revenue generation. So talk to us about that strategy shift to set the stage for us on what's been going on at the business.
So we are so lucky at Duolingo. We have a great business. Even in an environment where we're backing up a little bit to go forward, the company has really strong growth, really strong margins. We have a very strong balance sheet, well over $1 billion in cash. And I think the question when you have a CEO like ours, Luis, and a team like ours is, do you go big or not? And I think as a student of the tech industry, I see so many companies that get to that $1 billion range. And now the question is, can you be $5 billion? Can you be $10 billion? And at Duolingo, despite the fact that we have over 50 million daily active users today, we think that we can get to 1 billion users, which was sort of the long-term goal when the company went public. Our medium near-term goal is to get to 100. And so I think we sat around the table as the board. We've now sat around the table now that I'm on management as a management team and said, we got to go for it. And so we continue to believe that the prize is very, very large if we continue to go forward from here. And that's why we made the decision. Now, we're really lucky. The decision to invest in the business comes profitably. We're going to generate over $350 million in free cash flow this year. So the cost, if you will, of doing this is coming from a place of really solid financial base. And that gives us the opportunity to be brave about the long term, despite being in a public market world where the short term tends to take precedence.
What's the cost of not pursuing this strategy, Gillian? Because we've seen this interesting evolution of tech stocks and tech IPOs over the last couple of years, where it was a growth at all costs to let's focus in on profitability. And you have that. But what is the alternative state? If you don't go big or go home, which is your strategy now,
Sure.
Do you just stay as sort of a mid-sized company with good cash flow, you become a dividend yielder, and that's perfectly fine for some subsection of the market. Why not just do that instead?
Look, I think that is possibly an opportunity for us. I think we think and believe, and the company was founded on the idea we can make a bigger impact. And this is a very mission-driven company. And I think sitting back to the sort of plan B opportunity doesn't feel very Duolingo to me. It doesn't feel like what we all set out to go do. It just so happens that what we set out to go do can build a much bigger business. And we think that can create far more return for our shareholders than sort of staying in the smaller course. Now, what we don't know in this world is that everything is changing with AI, and who knows whether the status quo path would work. We think that going for the bigger prize is the answer, and we think we have all the tools to get that to happen.
Well, let's talk about how it's going. We're about 6 months in to that shift. And I want to just read an excerpt, Gillian, if you don't mind, from a Morgan Stanley report that came out the day after your earnings, and at least give you Morgan Stanley's perspective to give you a chance to react to it. So I'm going to read it out. This report says, quote, approximately 6 months into Duolingo's increased focus on user growth, it has not yet been able to meaningfully inflect DAUs. Although Duolingo is launching more shots on goal, it's unclear what and when could drive a turnaround. So let's talk about that perspective. What is going well? Talk to us about those shots on goal, and then let's come back to how those are going.
Absolutely. I think with all respect to Morgan Stanley, we love Nathan. He's great. We would consider this change of strategy to be actually sort of since the beginning of the year. It hasn't been a full 6 months, but and more importantly, it's really too early to be expecting that we would have seen the turn in the business yet. Product-driven change comes over time. And so from our perspective, it's really too early to say, yes, this is going to work, or no, it is not. But when I think about the shots we have on goal, they are meaningful. So if I sit back and look at it, there is all the product work we are doing to drive DAU growth that we think will follow through in terms of bookings growth. We secondly have a pretty good bet and a lot of growth happening in the Asia region, led by China, which is a terrific market for us, monetizes really well. So that is another vector where we are just getting started in terms of what the potential of Duolingo could be. Thirdly, and we've talked a lot with this read about this, we are making a bet on performance marketing, something that Duolingo hadn't done in the past at size. And so that's another vector of where we can gain growth. So when I put it all together, the product bet's probably the biggest one in terms of what are we giving the vast majority of our customers that is going to continue to drive us to more and more customers, more and more usage. That is probably our biggest bet in all of them. But I feel like we have plenty of vectors to go from. And so I think while it is true, it takes some time to make that happen, I feel really good about what we have in terms of the opportunities to drive that growth.
Let's talk about in some more detail those product developments, Gillian, because I think that's what gets folks really excited. I think Duolingo has been associated for a long time with product innovation just in the language learning space, period. So if we dig into what's been going on, you've now got, for free and paid users, new ways to practice speaking. I've just got this from your recent shareholder letter. Spoken tokens, flashcards, speaking adventures. Talk to us about the kinds of content that your team at Duolingo is trying to get more creative with.
So if you know Duolingo, you know that we are a very robust tester of all sorts of different changes to the product. So that environment, that approach to the product continues. But there are a couple of bigger bets to think about. One is speaking. So we believe, and our research would show, that speaking improves learning outcomes. We truly believe that for Duolingo to build the biggest business it can, learning outcomes is the path to that. And so what we are doing is taking speaking and verbal back and forth in terms of what we can do and spreading it out across our user base. So before, that was all enabled by AI. It was pretty expensive. So it sat only behind our Max tier, which is sort of our highest end tier. What we have decided to do this year is to spread that out because we would like to be the ones that are delivering that AI ingredient, if you will, to more and more and more of our customers. So we're doing that. That's a big bet for us. It's really important. And at the core of it is learning outcomes. There are some other really interesting vectors for Duolingo as well. As you may know, Duolingo launched chess. Now it's almost less than a year ago. Mm-hmm. And chess has gone from nothing to one of our largest generators of DAU. The opportunity for us to prove that we can teach things even outside language is actually fundamental to how do you get to 1 billion learners. The second one that's really interesting is math. Yeah. So we are now at a place where math content goes from K through 12. I can't personally keep up with all of it. My husband's a math teacher and he's making his way through all the course and checking it for me. But if we can show that we can teach math across the board, that opens up huge number of vectors for us in terms of what we can teach on top of teaching the languages themselves. And we think that is a very big unlock for us.
Well, even within languages, let's talk about Asian languages, because of the 2 billion language learners globally, a large portion are based in Asia and specifically in China. Talk to us about your Asian language offering on Duolingo, Gillian, because that caught my eye as an area that's growing pretty rapidly.
So in Asia, you see two things going on. There's a lot of English learners in Asia, and particularly in China. The thirst for that English course is very high, and we continue to push there. In terms of the rest of the Asian languages, we are doing a lot over there. The courses are very good, and we continue to push. As you know, we have added a tremendous amount of content to our courses across all the languages, including in Asia.
So just to read some of the numbers that came out from your end, those learning Chinese, Japanese, and Korean on Duolingo, each of those growing 30% since last June. How does that compare with other language, with the rate of growth in other languages on the Duolingo platform?
So those will be slightly faster than the others. I think the fastest growing course right now has been chess and math increasingly as well. But I think that we're seeing growth across the board. There's not like a language that's ahead or behind in a very meaningful way.
So let's talk about chess, and also let's talk about math, and then music's another one that your shareholder letter cited as a potential avenue. Duolingo has announced a plan to launch a math tutor service. Talk to us about that. When can we expect that to launch, and how human intensive versus AI intensive is that tutoring offering going to be?
Yeah, I think it's not a math tutor. So Duolingo moved away from human tutors long ago, but I think what the team is talking about is that we would like Duolingo to be as good as a tutor. So in other words, we believe the collection of technology that we can provide will give us the opportunity to provide a service that is as good as if you were able to hire a tutor. Now, what's really amazing about that is what that does is give way more folks the ability to afford a tutor, because Duolingo is meaningfully less expensive than hiring a tutor. So for us, the idea that Duolingo's course quality is at a place where it could replace a tutor is really meaningful for how we're going to drive the company to 100 million users and then 1 billion.
Growing a business has never been easy. If it were, spreadsheets would be optional and stress would be a hobby. Whether you're navigating a complex industry or actively trying to reinvent one, KeyBank brings a deep bench of banking experts who collaborate on market-proven solutions. They're not just here for the business you're running today, they're here for the one you're building toward next. Reimagine business as usual, KeyBank opens doors. Learn more at key.com/B2B. That's key.com/B2B. You know, we've talked a lot about AI, Gillian, and I just wanted to quote something from your shareholder letter, which is about your investments in AI tools and just the sheer scale of content creation for which AI is being deployed. You said here in quote, Q1 2026 alone, we published 20,500 course units across our language courses, up from 7,100 per quarter in 2025. So that's nearly a threefold increase in your content production. What is the cost? When you look at the financials, how would we track that through onto the P&L to see where that expense is coming through, if at all?
So you see AI costs coming into Duolingo in two places. So there's the actual AI ingredient, if you will, in the product itself, and that's going to run through our gross margin line, essentially. So when we did our earnings, what we talked about was our margins, which are currently in the low 70%, going down to about 69%. We are excited by that. That may seem counterintuitive, but it means we're putting more and more AI content into the product. And we think that's the right answer for our customer base. So that's where you would see it in terms of ingredient technology for the product. In terms of developing the product and our internal efforts, that would all run through our operating expense lines. And we are making meaningful investments in both the operating expense line and on the cost of goods sold line.
And so could you give us a sense of the scale from a dollar perspective or as a percent revenue perspective, Gillian, of those investments?
I think on the gross margin side, the vast majority of the delta in gross margin is coming from the AI costs. On the operating expense side, it is encapsulated in the guidance we have given. We haven't disclosed the specific amount, but it measures in the millions.
Let's talk about the guidance that you've given to the street, Gillian. Would you mind just walking us through that and in the outlook for 2026 that you've laid out there?
Sure. So we've laid out a guidance that is about the metrics on which we want to operate the company. So when you're doing the kind of transition we're doing in terms of being an investment year, you kind of have to figure out, what are we operating to? What are the guidelines? What are the sort of areas that we're okay with and not okay with? In our case, that is that we want to drive 10 to 12% bookings growth, 15 to 18% revenue growth, and an adjusted EBITDA margin of around 25%. And so when we go look at guidance, and how we're operating the business, we are looking at those as our kind of the box we want to operate in. In terms of bookings, which is sort of the leading metric we guided to about 10.5% for 26, given everything we can see today. And I think the thing we're trying to remind folks of is that that number could change as we move through the year. What we're really trying to give folks is here's the framework, and then in each quarter try to give folks a point estimate of what we're seeing today, given everything we know.
I'm taking a look at your balance sheet, Gillian. You referred to it at the top, over $1 billion of cash on your balance sheet. I'm also taking a look at the liability side. You've got very de minimis debt. You know, I would argue actually you're underlevered relative to what you could be doing. And with the kind of margin profile you've laid out and that kind of guidance, we're looking at pretty healthy operating free cash flow, is how I would interpret that looking forward. So when can we expect a dividend policy from Duolingo? When's it coming? When's the cash coming, Gillian?
Yeah, I mean, look, I think when we look at how we think about capital allocation, right now, we think it's great that we have the kind of cash balance we do. It gives us complete ownership of our own future. I think what we're doing this year, both because we think it's a really good move financially and also to show our support for our shareholders, is we've begun buying back stocks. So we have a $400 million authorization. We used about just over 50 million of that in Q1. And what's interesting about that number is we ended up buying back all of the net dilution from last year already in the quarter. So we're really looking at it relative to our cash flow, that 350 plus in free cash flow we think is going to come relative to the 400 million that we're willing to buy back at this moment. Those two things are related. And in addition, we are keeping an eye on dilution from previous years and how many of those years can we buy in at a moment when maybe there's a little bit of confusion or misunderstanding about the stock in terms of what we think we can do long term. We really believe in the long term. We think it's a great return for our shareholders to be reducing that dilution. And that's really our focus on the capital allocation front at this point.
So just taking that long-term view, Gillian, I'm going to ask a couple of cheeky questions, because with a go big or go home mentality, which I'm really excited actually to see continue to evolve, because for public companies to do this takes a certain amount of intestinal fortitude, and it's exciting to see a team embrace it. But you've got the cash, so could we anticipate some transformational M&A, some creative acquisitions to turbocharge some of this?
You know, it's possible. Anything is possible, obviously. I think what you've seen at Duolingo to date is that Duolingo has done a number of tuck-in acquisitions, brought really good talent onto the team. Duolingo is such a unique company that it is awfully hard to meet our bar in terms of what could come in and be additive to the company. So to date, where we've landed is that building ourselves makes the most sense. We have an excellent business development team. They're looking at everything that is out there. And to date, it hasn't made sense for Duolingo. Having that cash balance gives us the opportunity to do that, were it to present itself. But right now, and what you've seen is that largely these are sort of on the margin. Great acquisitions because we're getting wonderful talent into the company. But right now there hasn't been something transformative. And, I can't say there won't be, but right now we're really focused on what we can do at Duolingo, building up our team.
What about a different kind of transformative, which is in parallel with or in addition to building out the digital capabilities that is your hero positioning? What about adding real-life tutoring centers or having a sort of experiential aspect or leg of the stool here?
I think when I look at the history of the company and my conversations with the company, both as a board member and now as CFO, we have found at every turn that the software itself can provide everything we think is necessary for the future of our customers. And even more so in an AI-driven world where we have all of that technology that we can bring to the market. Our value add is in creating a habit for you, getting you to come back, want to learn a language, find it fun, engage you in a really deep way. And AI now gives us the opportunity to do that even better. And so when we look at that as compared to live tutoring, we continue to think that our product can outrun that as an opportunity. So that's why we keep landing at software only.
And then last question for you, Gillian, it's really about your journey. It's very interesting for me to see that you were on the board of the business for 6 years. You decided to leave your board seat behind and you go in-house. You become part of the management team as Chief Financial Officer. What's been the greatest surprise that you've had in that transition? And give me one of each. Give me a positive one and one that you were really just not expecting.
Well, let's see. I think the team is everything I thought they would be. So one of the nice surprises is coming into the company and not having sort of a wall of things that I didn't expect to find at the company. So that just means I get to kind of start running with the team forward. I'm very lucky. Matt, who you met, who came before me, who I helped hire, and I have been working with all these years, is terrific. I'm so lucky. Many times when you come in as CFO at a company, you have to rebuild team, you have to do all these things, and that is not what I have. I get to just be in the position of taking it to the next phase. And so I'm really lucky in that regard. I think on the kind of funny, my last company was hybrid. So I was partly in the office, part out. The really big surprise is how much I love being at the office.
Oh, interesting.
I love it. I'm really enjoying being here with the team in person every day. It's a funny one, right? But it is actually the thing that has surprised me the most is just how much of a difference you can make being in the room with everyone, having the conversation as opposed to on Zoom the whole time. So that's actually been a funny surprise. Probably not as important to like what the future of Duolingo is going to be, but really interesting to me in operating a finance team. I've been operating finance teams for a long time. The last 2 CFO roles I had were largely hybrid or remote even. And this one is very different, and that's kind of fun.
Well, you are here in New York, Gillian, so please come back. We would love to have you back on After Earnings to let us know how it's going, maybe a couple of earnings rounds from now, because it's a big year for Duolingo. Excited to see how it unfolds.
It is. Duolingo is having a very big year. This is an important year. I think the bottom line is we are so lucky that we get to operate Duolingo this way because we all can see where this goes. It's going to take a little patience for our investors, and we've been asking and being very transparent with investors that patience is needed. But we're really excited, and I look forward to keeping you updated in a couple quarters when we've made more progress.
Gillian Munson, Chief Financial Officer at Duolingo. Thank you so much for joining. Appreciate your time.
Thank you for the time. Really appreciate it.
I'm Anne Berry. Thank you for tuning into After Earnings, the show that brings you up close and personal with the executives behind the world's most interesting publicly traded companies. If you learned something today, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share with your friends. Upcoming episodes will feature the CEOs and CFOs from DraftKings, Match Group, Twilio, and many others. We'll see you next time.